The 7 levels of upgraded Marvel heroes explained. Level 1, Tactical Evolution. Rogue after mastering her powers. For decades, Rogue's inability to touch another living being without absorbing their powers, memories, and life force defined her tragic existence. The Mississippi runaway who accidentally put her first boyfriend into a coma carried that curse like a scarlet letter, making every relationship a minefield of potential catastrophe. Created by Chris Claremont and Michael Golden in Avengers Annual Number 10 from 1981, Rogue joined the X-Men specifically seeking Professor Xavier's help in controlling her devastating ability. What made her journey revolutionary was when writer Mike Carey finally delivered on that decades-old promise in X-Men Legacy Number 224 from June 2009, illustrated by Scott Eaton and Andrew Hennessy. The breakthrough came through an unlikely partnership between Xavier and Danger, the sentient manifestation of the X-Men's Danger Room who had every reason to hate Xavier after years of enslavement. Together, they entered Rogue's psyche and discovered the traumatic absorption of both her first boyfriend Cody and Carol Danvers had created psychological barriers that arrested her power's natural evolution, keeping her in a state of perpetual adolescence. The transformation Carey orchestrated elevated Rogue from tortured victim to confident leader, capable of tactical genius on the battlefield. With full control over her absorption abilities, she could borrow small amounts of power from multiple teammates simultaneously without causing harm, turning herself into a living Swiss Army knife of mutant abilities. During the battle against the techno-organic villain Bastion, Rogue absorbed the powers of several X-Men at once, creating a devastating combination that would have been impossible before her breakthrough. She went from avoiding physical contact at all costs to being able to shake hands with Gambit for the first time in their relationship, without fear of killing him. This wasn't about gaining raw power, but unlocking the tactical flexibility she always possessed. The Mike Carey run transformed her into a mentor figure for younger mutants at Utopia, specifically those struggling with dangerous or uncontrollable ability. She understood their pain intimately because she'd lived it, making her the perfect teacher for kids who felt like weapons rather than heroes. Daredevil, Kingpin of Hell's Kitchen. When Matt Murdock beat Wilson Fisk to within an inch of his life and declared himself the new Kingpin of Hell's Kitchen, readers witnessed something far darker than Captain America picking up Thor's hammer. Created by Stan Lee and Bill Everett in Daredevil number 1 from April 1964, Matt Murdock built his dual identity around being both a defense attorney upholding the law by day and a vigilante who operated in its shadows by night. The transformation into crime boss came during Brian Michael Bendis and Alex Maleev's groundbreaking run, specifically in Daredevil number 56 from September 2004, when Murdock crossed a line he'd always sworn he'd never approach. The catalyst was Fisk's latest attempt to reclaim his criminal empire after previous defeats, but this time, Matt didn't just stop him, he became him. The psychology was brutally simple. If Matt controlled all criminal activity in Hell's Kitchen, he could prevent the kind of collateral damage that cost innocent lives when crime bosses went to war. He forbade all criminal activity under his watch, creating an iron-fisted peace that was technically illegal, while saving more lives than his traditional vigilante work ever managed. The Kingpin mantle fundamentally changed how Murdock fought crime, replacing reactive justice with proactive control. Instead of waiting for criminals to commit crimes and then punishing them, he prevented the crimes from happening in the first place through the terrifying reputation of Daredevil as crime lords, street-level thugs who might have robbed a bodega thought twice when they knew the devil of Hell's Kitchen would come for them. Not just as a costumed vigilante, but as their boss, who could destroy their lives 6 different ways. This era, collected in the trade paperback Daredevil Volume 9, King of Hell's Kitchen, showed Matt commanding resources that dwarfed anything the Avengers could offer him. He had eyes and ears on every street corner, informants in every organization, and the fear that comes with having murdered the previous Kingpin's reputation. The irony wasn't lost on Matt himself, who recognized he'd become the very thing he swore to fight. The storyline saw him clash with the Yakuza who came to stake their claim, requiring guest appearances from Spider-Man, Luke Cage, Iron Fist, Reed Richards, and Doctor Strange to handle the escalating crisis. Matt's time as King of Hell's Kitchen proved that sometimes the scariest upgrades aren't about gaining new powers, but about being willing to use the ones you already have in ways that cross every moral line you've drawn. Level 2. Biological Transformations. Vampire Jubilee. When a vampire suicide bomber detonated in San Francisco's Union Square during the summer of 2010, covering Jubilation Lee in infected blood, it seemed like the final cruel twist for a hero who'd already lost everything. Created by Chris Claremont and Mark Silvestri in Uncanny X-Men number 244 from May 1989, Jubilee became Wolverine's surrogate daughter and a founding member of Generation X before losing her mutant powers during the House of M event's devastating decimation storyline in 2006. The vampiric transformation came courtesy of Victor Gischler and Paco Medina in X-Men number 1 from July 2010, as part of the Curse of the Mutants event that saw Dracula's son Zaros attempting to unite all vampire clans under his rule. Zaros specifically targeted Jubilee because she was emotionally close to Wolverine, planning to use her as bait to turn Logan himself into a vampire and add his healing factor to the Vampire Nation's arsenal. The manufactured virus slowly transformed Jubilee over several issues until she finally succumbed in X-Men #3, where Zaros personally bit her to complete the conversion. What made Vampire Jubilee's upgrade significant wasn't just trading fireworks for fangs, but how she adapted to maintain her humanity despite her bloodlust. The X-Men's scientific think tank, X-Club, couldn't cure her vampirism, leading Wolverine to donate his healing factor-enhanced blood to keep her bloodthirsty urges manageable. She joined the Forgiven, a secret sect of heroic vampires led by the samurai Raiso, who taught her to feed exclusively on animal blood and gave her a lightbender amulet that allowed her to walk in sunlight without bursting into flames. Her vampiric powers included superhuman strength and speed that far exceeded what her mutant abilities ever provided. The ability to transform into vapor, to avoid attacks, and accelerated healing made her nearly impossible to kill. She wielded these abilities while teaching at the Xavier Institute alongside other former vampires and struggling mutants, using her cursed state as a teaching tool for students who felt their powers made them monsters. Jubilee remained a vampire for nearly a decade in publication time from 2010 to 2018, making it one of the longest-lasting character transformations in X-Men history. Her vampirism only ended when Quentin Quire sacrificed his shard of the Phoenix Force to save her from burning alive in the sun, simultaneously curing her vampirism and restoring her original mutant powers in Generation X-86 by Christina Strain and Amilcar Pinna. Captain America with super strength. Steve Rogers receiving a temporary boost of genuine superhuman strength rather than peak human conditioning might sound redundant, but the implications shook the Marvel Universe when it happened. Created by Joe Simon and Jack Kirby in Captain America Comics #1 from March 1941, Steve Rogers was famously enhanced to the peak of human physical perfection. Not superhuman, but the absolute maximum a human body could theoretically achieve. For decades, that distinction mattered immensely. Cap couldn't bench press cars like Thor. He simply optimized every ounce of strength a 240-pound man could possess through perfect genetics and biology. The super strength upgrade came during Nick Spencer's run following the Secret Empire event, where Steve briefly wielded power levels that put him in Hulk-adjacent territory. The boost came from cosmic energy exposure and Hydra's manipulation of the cosmic cube, allowing Rogers to perform feats that no amount of peak human conditioning could explain. He punched through reinforced steel barriers designed to contain actual superhumans, through vehicles with the casual ease of Spider-Man, and traded blows with opponents who would have historically steamrolled his tactical genius with sheer power. The fundamental change wasn't just about hitting harder, but about removing the ceiling that made Captain America inspiring in the first place. Part of Steve Rogers' appeal always lay in watching a technically perfect fighter use strategy and skill to defeat opponents with vastly superior physical gifts. When he could punch as hard as She-Hulk, that dynamic evaporated. He became just another brick, losing the David versus Goliath quality that made him compelling. The super strength was notably temporary, with Marvel clearly recognizing that permanent power creep would undermine Cap's core appeal. Nevertheless, during his brief time wielding genuinely superhuman might, Steve demonstrated what happens when you give perfect technique, unlimited force to apply. He could throw his shield with enough velocity to embed it inches deep in adamantium surfaces, his tactical acumen now backed by the muscle to execute strategies that previously required calling in heavy hitters like Thor or Wonder Man. The storyline examined whether power corrupts or reveals character, as even with godlike strength, Steve remained the same principled soldier, just one who could finally throw a punch that justified standing alongside literal gods on the Avengers roster without anyone questioning whether he belonged there. Level 3. Mutation Mastery. Emma Frost's secondary mutation. The White Queen discovering she could transform her entire body into organic diamond represented one of the most significant power evolutions in X-Men history. Created by Chris Claremont and John Byrne in Uncanny X-Men #129, from January 1980, Emma Frost began as a powerful telepath and headmistress of the Hellfire Club's training school for young mutants. Her telepathic abilities ranked among the strongest on Earth, allowing her to mind control thousands of people simultaneously, project devastating psionic attacks, and even survive having her physical body destroyed by transferring her consciousness into another's mind. The secondary mutation emerged during Grant Morrison's New X-Men run in 2001, specifically showcased in New X-Men #115. Illustrated by Frank Quitely. The diamond form provided Emma with near invulnerability, allowing her to withstand attacks that would pulp a normal human body, from high-caliber bullets to superhuman strikes. The trade-off was that in diamond form, she couldn't access her telepathic powers, forcing tactical decisions about when to be a psychic goddess and when to be an indestructible tank. Morrison's genius was recognizing that Emma's secondary mutation perfectly reflected her psychological evolution from villain to hero. The diamond form represented an impenetrable shell, a literal manifestation of the emotional wall she'd built after years of manipulation and betrayal in the Hellfire Club. It symbolized her inability to be vulnerable while remaining powerful, forcing her to choose between mental dominance and physical security. The secondary mutation also made Emma relevant on modern X-Men teams where raw telepathic power was becoming common. Professor X had the psychic strength, Jean Grey had the Phoenix Force, but Emma had versatility that made her essential in different combat situations. She used her diamond form to tank attacks meant for squishier teammates, buying time for tactical retreats or counteroffenses. The transformation was permanent, not something she could will away, meaning Emma would never return to being a pure telepath. This forced character growth as she learned to work with teammates rather than controlling them, since she spent significant combat time in diamond form where her telepathy was useless, and she needed allies to cover her weaknesses. Cyclops' revolutionary leader, Scott Summers, transforming from Xavier's dutiful soldier into a radical revolutionary, willing to build a mutant nation through force, represented perhaps the most dramatic character evolution in X-Men history. Created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby in X-Men #1 from September 1963, Scott Summers was designed as the perfect team leader, disciplined, strategic, unfailingly loyal to Xavier's dream of peaceful coexistence between humans and mutants. For decades, Cyclops embodied the establishment, the responsible authority figure who followed orders and trusted that the system would eventually recognize mutants' rights. The transformation began in earnest during the Schism event in 2011 and accelerated through Avengers vs. X-Men in 2012, where Scott killed Professor Xavier while possessed by the Phoenix Force. Created by Jason Aaron, Brian Michael Bendis, and other writers across multiple titles, Revolutionary Cyclops rejected peaceful integration and instead declared that mutant kind would take its place by force, establishing the sovereign mutant nation of Krakoa. The upgrade wasn't about Cyclops gaining new powers, but about him unleashing the full strategic potential he'd always possessed without Xavier's moral constraints. As the leader of a Krakoan mutant kind, Scott commanded an entire nation's resources, from resurrection protocols that made mutants effectively immortal to Krakoan gateways that gave them instantaneous global transport. He negotiated with world governments from a position of strength rather than begging for recognition, offering mutant miracle drugs in exchange for sovereignty and respect. His tactical acumen, always impressive, became terrifying when no longer hobbled by adherence to Xavier's dream. He planned operations that assumed casualties and collateral damage as acceptable costs. The Summers Gambit approach to problem-solving meant Scott would sacrifice individual mutants if it secured the species' future, a utilitarian calculus that horrified his former teammates but earned grudging respect from adversaries. Revolutionary Cyclops proved that the most dangerous mutant wasn't necessarily the one with the strongest powers, but the one willing to use every resource without moral hesitation, transforming the Boy Scout team leader into a figure who terrified both heroes and villains with his absolute commitment to mutant supremacy. Level 4, Advanced Power Control. Invisible Woman. Sue Storm's evolution from the weakest Fantastic Four member into one of Marvel's most powerful heroes represents a masterclass in unlocking untapped potential. Created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby in Fantastic Four #1 from November 1961, Sue originally could only turn invisible, useful for espionage but embarrassingly weak compared to teammates who stretched, burned, or transformed into orange rock monsters. Her force field powers emerged gradually, first as invisible barriers and eventually as devastating weapons she could shape into any configuration. Writers like John Byrne in the 1980s and Mark Waid in the 2000s systematically explored the physics-breaking implications of Sue's abilities. She could create microscopic force fields inside opponents' brains to induce instant strokes, expand force bubbles within solid objects to explode them from the inside, or generate constructs with enough durability to contain nuclear explosions. The upgrade was all control and creativity, as Sue learned to think of her force fields not as shields, but as the most versatile tool in the Marvel Universe. The true revelation of Sue's power came when she stopped holding back to avoid frightening her family. Dr. Doom, Marvel's premier genius villain, openly admitted that the Invisible Woman was the Fantastic Four member he feared most. Not Reed's intellect, not Johnny's flame, not Ben's strength, but Sue's potential to kill him before he could perceive the attack. She once demonstrated this by creating a force field that cut off blood flow to an enemy's brain, showing she could assassinate nearly anyone on Earth instantly and undetectably. Her invisible force constructs could be shaped into blades sharper than any metal, battering rams with planetary-level force or intricate machinery that performs specific functions. Sue could fly by riding force fields, create platforms for teammates, generate constructs that mimicked other powers like Iceman's ice slides or Magneto's electromagnetic shields. The Invisible Woman's upgrade proved that raw power matters less than precision and imagination, as her mastery allowed her to compete with cosmic-level threats, despite having technically the same abilities she possessed in 1961. Wolverine post-2000. Logan's evolution from scrappy street fighter to a warrior with centuries of accumulated skill and experience transformed him into Marvel's most dangerous close combat specialist. Created by Len Wein, John Romita Sr., and Herb Trimpe in The Incredible Hulk number 181 from November 1974, Wolverine initially relied on Berserker Rage and Healing Factor to win fights, using his adamantium claws as the world's deadliest can opener. His fighting style was effective but crude. Lots of stabbing, healing, and stabbing more. The post-2000 transformation came as writers began seriously exploring Logan's backstory, revealing he'd been alive since the late 1800s and accumulated training from virtually every martial arts tradition on Earth. Jason Aaron's Wolverine Goes to Hell arc and subsequent runs emphasized that Logan wasn't just tough, he was profoundly skilled. Having studied with samurai masters, Soviet Spetsnaz, Canadian Black Ops, CIA wetwork specialists, and mystical ninja clans like the Hand, modern Wolverine combined those centuries of training with tactical intelligence that matched or exceeded Captain America's battlefield awareness. He could disarm opponents with joint locks before they registered he'd moved, predict attack patterns by reading subtle body language, and adapt his fighting style mid-combat to counter any technique he'd previously encountered. Logan's healing factor meant he could practice the most dangerous techniques without fear of crippling himself, allowing mastery of styles that would kill normal practitioners during training. He became the go-to expert for training other heroes in close combat, teaching even cosmic powerhouses like Thor and Hulkling that sometimes the best way to fight is with 2 feet on the ground and a blade in your hand. The upgrade manifested in storylines where Wolverine defeated opponents who massively outclassed him in raw strength. He killed Sabretooth despite Victor being biologically superior, defeated Omega Red's death factor by fighting smart, and held his own against cosmic threats by targeting specific anatomical vulnerabilities. Post-2000 Wolverine proved that healing factor and unbreakable bones only get you so far. True mastery comes from centuries of getting stabbed and learning not to repeat mistakes. Level 5. Omega Level Awakening. Iceman. Bobby Drake's journey from class clown who threw snowballs to an Omega-level mutant capable of flash-freezing the planet showcased one of Marvel's most dramatic power, Revelations. Created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby in X-Men #1 from September 1963, Iceman was initially portrayed as the kid brother of the team, using his cryokinetic abilities to create ice slides and freeze enemies' feet to the ground. For decades, Bobby was treated as mid-tier at best, useful for transport and cooling beverages, but hardly a powerhouse. The Omega-level revelation came through multiple writers recognizing that someone who controlled moisture at the molecular level shouldn't be limited to party tricks. Emma Frost famously called him out in Uncanny X-Men #314 from July 1994, telling Bobby he was limiting himself through lack of imagination and confidence. She telepathically guided him to rebuild his entire body from ice molecules after being shattered, proving he was effectively immortal as long as environmental moisture existed. Writers like Mike Carey and Marjorie Liu further developed Iceman's abilities, showing Bobby could freeze oceanic water masses, create blizzards that covered entire cities, and manipulate moisture in someone's body to instantly freeze their internal organs. His consciousness could transfer between any ice construct he created, meaning destroying one ice body just forced him to reform elsewhere. You'd need to eliminate all moisture on Earth to truly kill him. The Omega-level designation meant Bobby ranked alongside Jean Grey and Magneto in raw power, despite his goofy personality making him seem less threatening. He could theoretically freeze the atmosphere, creating an extinction-level event that would make Magneto's electromagnetic pulses look like static shocks. Modern Iceman stories explored the psychological implications of being a god who chose to use his powers for ice slides, with Bobby struggling to reconcile his easygoing nature with world-ending potential. The upgrade transformed him from comic relief into someone who could single-handedly stop armies, freeze lakes to trap amphibious invasions, or create ice golems to fight while his consciousness observed safely from elsewhere. Iron Man Godkiller Armor. When Tony Stark built armor specifically designed to fight Celestials, he created something that transcended conventional superheroism into the realm of cosmic warfare. Created by Stan Lee, Larry Lieber, Don Heck, and Jack Kirby in Tales of Suspense number 39 from March 1963, Iron Man began as a businessman in a metal suit using repulsor technology to fight Cold War threats. The God-Killer armor appeared in Iron Man number 6 from November 2013 during Kieron Gillen's run illustrated by Greg Land, when Tony traveled into deep space and discovered an arms race between cosmic civilizations. The God-Killer was ancient technology, a city-sized suit of armor built by extinct alien races specifically to combat Celestials, the space gods who judged and destroyed entire civilizations. When Tony interfaced with the God-Killer, he gained access to weaponry that operated on scales difficult to comprehend, with energy outputs that could vaporize planets and defenses that withstood cosmic entity attacks. The philosophical implications of the God-Killer armor dwarfed its technical specifications. This wasn't Tony making a bigger suit with more missiles. This was him literally wearing something designed to kill gods who created entire species. The armor contained reality-warping technologies that bent physics to make the impossible routine, operating on principles that made the Infinity Stones look primitive by comparison. Tony could only pilot it for limited periods because the sheer scale of information and power overwhelmed human consciousness, even one as brilliant as his. During the brief time he wielded the God-Killer, Stark demonstrated why advanced alien civilizations feared Earth's technological growth. Humans went from wooden ships to God-killing weapons in barely 2 centuries. The armor ultimately proved too dangerous to keep, with Tony recognizing that someone would inevitably use it to destroy rather than protect. But for one shining moment, Iron Man was the most powerful being in the galaxy. The God-Killer represented Stark's ultimate expression of his core philosophy. Any problem can be solved with sufficient engineering, even problems involving entities who were judging planets before human ancestors climbed down from trees. Level 6. Mystical Ascension. Scarlet Witch, post-Avengers vs. X-Men. Wanda Maximoff's power amplification following her possession by the Phoenix Force transformed her from reality warper into something approaching a fundamental force of magic itself. Created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby in X-Men number 4 from March 1964, Scarlet Witch's probability-altering hex powers grew more potent over decades until Brian Michael Bendis had her rewrite reality and eliminate most mutants with 3 words in House of M. The Avengers vs. X-Men event in 2012 saw the Phoenix Force fragment among 5 mutants, including Cyclops, who killed Professor Xavier while corrupted. In the aftermath, a portion of the Phoenix's cosmic power permanently bonded with Wanda, amplifying her chaos magic to unprecedented levels. Rick Remender's Uncanny Avengers run showed Scarlet Witch wielding abilities that bent causality itself, rewriting the rules of probability so thoroughly that she could make impossible events not just likely but inevitable. The Phoenix-amplified Wanda could resurrect the dead by reversing their probability of death, create pocket realities that existed as genuine alternate timelines, and rewrite genetics at will to restore or remove mutations. Her hex spheres, previously unreliable manifestations that occasionally backfired, now operated with surgical precision, allowing her to target specific outcomes with godlike accuracy. She faced off against cosmic entities like the Apocalypse Twins and held her own through sheer reality manipulation, undoing their attacks by making them retroactively never happen. The upgrade positioned Scarlet Witch, which as the Sorcerer Supreme's magical peer, someone whose power derived not from studying ancient tomes, but from fundamentally being an anomaly in the universe's probability matrix. Her spells didn't request cosmic forces' permission, they simply altered what was real. This made Wanda terrifying to both allies and enemies, as her mental state directly influenced what reality would allow, meaning a breakdown could unmake cities or resurrect nightmares thought safely buried. The Phoenix-enhanced Scarlet Witch proved that the most dangerous magic users aren't those with the most spells, but those who can edit the spell check rules reality runs on. The Immortal Hulk. Bruce Banner's transformation into an unkillable horror that emerged after Sunset redefined the Hulk mythos from gamma radiation accident into supernatural nightmare. Created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby in The Incredible Hulk #1 from May 1962, the Hulk spent decades as Banner's rage-fueled alter ego getting stronger, as he got angrier but ultimately just a very angry strongman. Al Ewing and Joe Bennett's Immortal Hulk run beginning in 2018 recontextualized the Hulk as something demonic, connecting Banner's gamma transformation to the One Below All, a malevolent entity serving as the dark counterpart to the One Above All, Marvel's supreme creator deity. This Hulk could not be killed by any conventional means. When his body was destroyed, he regenerated from any remaining organic matter after Sunset, emerging more horrific with each resurrection. He demonstrated the ability to reform from a single severed arm, pulling the rest of his mass from dimensional warping rather than biological reconstruction. The immortal Hulk possessed powers that transcended simple super strength into body horror and reality manipulation. He could perceive and interact with ghosts, pull people into the below place where tortured souls gathered, and transform his body into nightmarish configurations of teeth and eyes that violated anatomical rules. Banner retained consciousness during these transformations but was trapped as a passenger, watching the Hulk serve as the one below all's champion in its war against creation. The horror stemmed from inevitability. You could dismember the Hulk, blast him into constituent atoms, seal him in the sun, and when night fell on any patch of Earth where his blood had touched, he would crawl back from hell to continue his rampage. Ewing's run revealed that every Hulk personality from Savage to Professor to Clue represented different aspects of this cosmic horror, with Banner's psyche fragmenting to contain something fundamentally incompatible with human consciousness. The immortal Hulk proved that the strongest there is was never about punching hardest, but about being the thing that won't stay dead no matter how thoroughly you kill it. Level 7. Cosmic Divinity. Carol Danvers as Binary. When Carol Danvers unlocked her binary form, she became one of the most powerful beings in the Marvel Universe, fueled by the energy of stars themselves. Created by Roy Thomas and Gene Colan in Marvel Superheroes number 13 from March 1968, Carol gained powers when caught in an explosion of Kree technology, initially operating as Ms. Marvel with flight, super strength, and energy absorption. The binary transformation came in Uncanny X-Men number 164 from December 1982, written by Chris Claremont and illustrated by Dave Cockrum, when the alien brood conducted genetic experiments that unlocked Carol's connection to a white hole, an astronomical object that expels matter and energy rather than consuming it like black holes. This linked her biologically to stellar phenomena, allowing her to absorb and manipulate the power of entire stars. As binary, Carol's hair and body erupted in cosmic flames, and she could fly at faster-than-light speeds, survive in the vacuum of space indefinitely, and project energy blasts that could vaporize starships. The binary form made Carol more powerful than the entire Avengers roster combined, operating on a scale where planetary threats were minor inconveniences. She could absorb solar radiation to fuel her powers, making her stronger the longer she fought near stars, and in theory could tap the energy output of supernovas if pushed to extremes. The Starjammers gladly recruited Binary for their cosmic adventures because she could single-handedly turn the tide of intergalactic wars. What made Binary tragic was its impermanence. Carol eventually exhausted the white hole connection and reverted to Miss Marvel power level, losing access to cosmic godhood. This demotion haunted her character development for years, as she remembered being powerful enough to hold dying suns together and now struggled with street-level threats. The binary powers represented Carol's potential unrealized, a glimpse of what she could achieve if not limited by earthbound thinking. When she eventually became Captain Marvel and accessed Kree technology to boost her abilities, Carol was essentially trying to recapture even a fraction of Binary's cosmic majesty, proof that once you've held Starfire in your hands, everything else feels like playing with matches. Cosmic Spider-Man. Peter Parker's brief tenure wielding the Enigma Force during Acts of Vengeance transformed him into Captain Universe, granting powers that made his regular spider abilities look like carnival tricks. Created by Stan Lee and Steve Ditko in Amazing Fantasy number 15 from August 1962, Spider-Man normally operated with proportional spider strength, wall crawling, and precognitive spider sense. The cosmic upgrade happened in 1989 across Spectacular Spider-Man number 158, Web of Spider-Man number 5961, and Amazing Spider-Man number 326 to 329, written by Jerry Conway and David Michelini, with art by Sal Buscema, Alex Saviuk, and Eric Larson. The Enigma Force, a sentient cosmic entity that bonds with individuals to face universe-threatening crises, chose Peter when Loki orchestrated acts of vengeance, manipulating villains to fight unfamiliar heroes. Peter received the Captain Universe powers accidentally through Professor Max Lubish's experimental equipment that tapped into extra-dimensional energy, though the Enigma Force had specifically selected him to combat Loki's ultimate creation, the Tri-Sentinel. Cosmic Spider-Man operated on power levels that let him punch the Grey Hulk into orbit, casually defeating villains like Magneto, Titania, and the Brothers Grimm who would normally require team effort. The cosmic enhancement amplified everything. His strength became Class 100 level. His spider sense expanded to perceive threats across dimensional boundaries, and he gained molecular manipulation, allowing him to transmute matter and energy at will. Peter could fly without web swinging, survive in space unassisted, and project energy blasts that could destroy Sentinel technology designed to counter mutant abilities. The story's climax and amazing. Spider-Man number 329 showed Peter unleashing the Enigma Force's full potential, adorning the classic Captain Universe costume and destroying the Tri-Sentinel. 3 Master Mold Sentinels merged by Loki's magic into a Manhattan-sized death machine. The cosmic power departure proved bittersweet. Peter returned to street-level heroics having glimpsed godhood. An alternate reality What If explored Spider-Man keeping Captain Universe powers permanently, showing him become so powerful that he accidentally destroyed the Juggernaut trying to stop him peacefully, illustrating that some upgrades are too dangerous for heroes who value life above victory. Thor, Allfather, and Herald of Galactus. When Thor Odinson ascended to become King of Asgard and then was forcibly transformed into Galactus's Herald of Thunder, he became the single most powerful iteration of the character in Marvel history. Created by Stan Lee, Larry Lieber, and Jack Kirby in Journey into Mystery number 83 from August 1962, Thor spent millennia as the God of Thunder and Asgard's prince, wielding Mjolnir and the Storm's Fury. The dual upgrade came in 2020's Thor number 1 by Donny Cates and Nick Klein, as Thor inherited the Odin Force upon taking his father's throne following the War of the Realms. The Odin Force, also called the Thor Force when wielded by Asgard's Allfather, granted reality-warping abilities that let Thor send Mjolnir across all 10 realms simultaneously to deliver threats of peace. Before he could settle into ruling, Galactus crashed into Asgard, fleeing the Black Winter, a cosmic force that had destroyed the previous iteration of the universe and shown Galactus a vision of his death at Thor's hands. To keep his prophesied killer close and powerful enough to help fight the Black Winter, Galactus forcibly imbued Thor with the power cosmic, transforming him into the Herald of Thunder. This stacked cosmic power atop Asgardian might atop the Odin Force, creating an entity that straddled the line between God and cosmic force of nature. The power at Cosmic granted Thor abilities beyond anything Asgardian magic could provide. Energy manipulation that dwarfed his lightning, matter transmutation that could reshape planets, and durability that let him tank attacks from abstract entities. With both power sources active simultaneously, Thor could challenge abstract concepts given form. His hammer, Mjolnir itself, transformed by exposure to cosmic energy. The Herald of Thunder led Galactus to 5 special planets whose consumption would power the Devourer enough to face the Black Winter, clashing with Beta Ray Bill so decisively that he destroyed Stormbreaker despite Bill being his equal before the upgrade. When facing the Black Winter itself, Thor learned that Galactus had been its herald all along, not humanity's protector, but cosmic doom's servant. In fury, Thor drained Galactus of all absorbed power and used the dying Devourer's body as a bomb to destroy the Black Winter, simultaneously committing deicide and saving reality. This made Thor the killer of Galactus, the oldest being in the current universe, fulfilling the prophecy and proving that even gods can become forces beyond godhood. Like and subscribe for more rankings of Marvel's most powerful upgrades.